Good morning. Today we are going to discuss the history chapter in class ninth NCERT book. The chapter is Peasants and Farmers. In this particular chapter, we are going to study about, I have broadly divided this chapter into three parts. That is the agriculture in England, the agriculture in America, and finally the commercial agriculture in India. So basically in this particular chapter, we will be discussing about the things that is how the agriculture started in various parts of the world, then how the farmers started shifting from subsistence agriculture to commercial agriculture, and finally how the mechanization took place. So broadly we are going to divide this chapter into three parts. The first one is the coming of modern agriculture in England, how they started practicing the commercial agriculture rather than the shifting agriculture or subsistence agriculture. Then second part we are going to discuss is about bread basket and dust bowl. In this we are going to study about the impact of agriculture on American landscape, how the landscape changed dramatically in America and what was its impact. And finally in the last part of the chapter we are going to discuss the Indian farmer and opium production. Here interestingly one thing is there that before the arrival of the British in India, the Indian farmers were basically indulged in subsistence farming. They were going only for the food crops. But once the Britishers came, because of their vested interest, they forced the Indian farmers to go for the opium production. So we will discuss about the things that how they were forced to go for the opium production and what were its impact. But in this module, today we are going to discuss only about the first part of the chapter, that is the coming of modern agriculture in England. The coming of modern agriculture in England, we are going to divide it into 4 or 5 subparts. The first one will be the time of open fields and commons. Then we are going to discuss about the new demands for grains. Then we will discuss the age of enclosures. Then what happened to the poor once the commercial fields were turned into the enclosures or the fields were turned into the enclosures. How it affected the life of the poor, that we are going to discuss in this particular topic, what happened to the poor, and finally the last one, the introduction of threshing machines. So let us start this chapter. Let us come towards the first one, the time of open fields and commons. Before we get into this particular topic, the time of open fields and commons, in the book one particular story has been given about the swing riots. Let me tell you something about the swing riot. What was that? During the time period of June 1830s, the farmers in England found their barn and haystack reduced to ashes by a fire that normally started during the night. The farmers were amazed who were the people who were putting their barn and haystack on fire, and then after very soon by the month of August, they found that their threshing machines were destroyed by laborers. Soon this riot spread all over the England and many machines were broken. The farmers received threatening letters urging them to stop using machines that deprived workmen of their livelihood. Most of these letters were signed in the name of Captain Swing. So the farmers were amazed that who is this Captain Swing and why they were attacking on the barn and haystacks, why they were putting fire on the barn and haystacks, and why they were attacking on the machines. They urged to the government to control these riots. Government took action. Those suspected of rioting were rounded up. 1976 prisoners were tried, 9 men were hanged, 505 transported, over 450 of them to Australia, and 644 behind bars. But again one thing was still amazing, what was that Captain Swing riot and who was controlling it. So this one is, we can say, the flashback of this chapter. We have to work out the answer, who was Captain Swing and why these riots occurred. For this, the very first topic which we have to discuss is the time of open fields and commons. Before the starting of commercial agriculture, the rural areas in England, or we can say the villages in England, were basically having the open fields and commons. Let me discuss to you or tell you about what do you mean by open fields and commons. If we look for the open fields, each villager who was interested in farming was allocated a number of strips to cultivate. Whatever was the open countryside, that was divided into the strips, and these strips were divided among the common people where they can do the cultivation. Usually these strips were of varying quality and often located in different places, not next to each other. You can see here presence of open fields and commons. The effort was to ensure that everybody had a mix of good and bad lands, and these strips were given to the people on the basis of rotation. One year you have done the agriculture on this particular field, next year you will be shifted to some other field. So these were termed as the open fields, and if we come towards the commons, beyond these strips of cultivation lay the common land. All villages had access to the commons. The commons generally had the ponds, or we can say the jungles, where the villagers used to collect the things. The pastures where their cows and grazed their sheep, collected fuel wood for fire and berries, and fruit for food. They fished in the rivers and ponds and hunted rabbit in common forest. So overall we can say that the presence of open fields and commons were quite helpful for the poor. They used to collect their living from these open fields and commons, and there was no uneven distribution of money in the rural areas or the countryside of England. But very soon the situation turned. Very soon the situation changed. If we look towards the importance of open fields and commons for poor, obviously it was quite clear